You're a single parent of a teen boy who's slipping away mentally and emotionally, with screens swallowing him and social media making it worse. If your son is calm, respectful, even well-liked at school, but then comes home irritable, sharp, sometimes explosive, you're not dealing with rebellion or attitude. You're looking at undeveloped power. And if you try to suppress undeveloped power, you don't raise a well-adjusted young man. You either raise a compliant shell who learns to hide everything real about himself, or you raise a ticking time bomb that eventually loses control in a context you can't influence anymore. So the question isn't, how do I stop this behavior? The question is, what is this behavior trying to express? Now, this is where Carl Jung becomes extremely useful, because he gave us a language for something most parents feel but can't quite articulate. He called it the shadow. Not in a mystical sense, but in a very practical sense. The shadow is everything your son learns to push down because it doesn't fit what's acceptable. Aggression, dominance, sexuality, ambition. The parts of him that are intense, unpredictable, difficult to control. And very early on, he starts getting the message, sometimes directly or indirectly, that these parts are a problem. They're too much, they're not appropriate, something to tone down. So he adapts. He builds a version of himself that gets approval, that's polite and controlled, easy to manage. That's the persona, the mask. But the other parts don't disappear. They get pushed into the background. And this is the shift most parents miss. Your son is not becoming angry. He's becoming split. On one side, the version of him that gets rewarded. On the other side, the version that carries raw intensity with nowhere to go. And the bigger that gap becomes, the more pressure builds inside the system. If you want to understand how to channel that intensity into something structured, so it actually builds him instead of creating constant friction at home, that's exactly what I break down inside my Skool community. Links in the description. Because what gets suppressed doesn't weaken. It goes underground and gains force. So eventually it shows up, not in a clean, articulated way. It leaks out. Small things trigger disproportionate reactions. You get defiance, irritation, shutdown, or the opposite, complete withdrawal, apathy, disengagement, explosion or implosion. Different surface, same mechanism. And teenage boys are right at the center of this, because adolescence is a phase where all of this turns on at once. Physical energy ramps up, sexual drive appears, competitive instincts become stronger. The need for hierarchy, status, respect, all of that becomes real in a way it wasn't before. At the exact same time, the environment they're in is telling them to regulate, tone down, be agreeable, don't offend, don't be too much. So they learn to suppress power without learning how to use it. That's the problem. Because power that isn't expressed consciously doesn't disappear. It comes out sideways. At home, in relationships, in moments where control drops. And this is where most parents misread the situation. They see anger and treat it as a behavior issue, something to correct, something to eliminate. But from this perspective, anger is not the core problem. It's a signal. It's showing you that something inside him is active, but not integrated. And here's the part that's uncomfortable but important. The shadow doesn't just contain what's bad. It contains potential too. Assertiveness lives there. The ability to say no. The ability to take risks. To lead. To stand his ground. If you try to remove the anger completely, you often remove the foundation those traits are built on. So now you get a boy who's easier in the short term, but weaker in the long term. More agreeable, but less capable. Less conflict at home, but more difficulty navigating the world, the real world, later. Like years down the line for the rest of his life. There's another layer here that most people never consider, which is one of Jung's more practical ideas called projection. What we don't accept in ourselves, we react to more strongly in others. So when your son expresses anger, your reaction to it isn't just about him. It's also shaped by your own relationship to anger, right? If you weren't allowed to express it, if you learned early that it was dangerous or unacceptable, you're more likely to shut it down in him as well. So now it's not just his shadow in the room, it's yours too. Which is why this becomes so charged so quickly. What actually helps is not letting him rage freely, and it's not suppressing everything either. It's integration. Making that energy conscious and giving it structure. That starts with naming it, not judging it or minimizing it. Just recognizing what's there. You're angry, there's intensity here. Then it needs direction, physical outlets, competition, challenge. Something where that energy can be expressed without turning into chaos. And within that, he learns control. Not suppression, but control. That's the distinction that matters. Because the goal is not to remove the shadow. It's to integrate it, to bring it into awareness so it can be used instead of avoided. Jung called that individuation, becoming whole instead of split. So the shift for you as a parent is simple, but not easy. Stop treating his anger as something to eliminate and start treating it as something that needs direction. That doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or chaos at home. It means recognizing that what you're seeing is not pathology. It's a developmental process that hasn't been guided yet. And without guidance, it will either turn against the world or against himself.